Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into this concept called authoritarian high modernism.
Mm.
Kind of a mouthful, right?
It is, but
A little intimidating.
it is a little intimidating. Trust me, this is going to be a good one. It's super relevant to how we think about like literally everything from cities to revolutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you shared with me some excerpts from James C. Scott's book, Seeing Like a State.
Yes.
And we're going to unpack how some of these plans to like improve society
Yeah.
sometimes
Go terribly wrong.
they go terribly wrong when they're
Right.
met with good intentions.
Yeah, it's a fascinating paradox, right? We're going to be looking at the core principles of high modernism,
Yeah.
especially how they played out in urban planning. So we'll look at someone like Le Corbusier,
Yep.
and in revolutionary movements, surprisingly, Lenin. You might not think those two have much in common,
Right.
but their ideologies share some striking similarities. Yeah, I'm already intrigued by that. So we're talking about like how Brasilia, which was supposed to be this like utopian city,
Yeah.
ended up feeling really sterile.
Yeah.
And like how did Lenin's ideas about this perfectly organized revolution clashed with what actually happened in Russia?
Exactly. We'll see that these grand plans, often driven by a belief in progress and rational design,
Right.
can have some unintended consequences when they fail to consider
Yeah.
human behavior and
yeah.
individual freedom.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
What is high modernism?
Yeah.
Right,
Break
I
it
mean-
down for us. High modernism, think of it as this unwavering belief in the
Yeah.
power of science and technology to solve social problems.
Okay.
So that's like the core of it.
Mhm.
And high modernism is all about applying these principles to design a perfect society.
Okay.
There's really strong faith in rational design,
Okay.
a tendency to dismiss tradition and history,
Okay.
and a laser focus on the future.
So it's not that like progress is bad.
Right.
It's
It's how we...
the approach.
That's the key.
Yeah.
High modernism often takes this idea of progress to an extreme.
Okay.
It assumes that there's this one single right way
Right.
to organize society, like scientifically, like the optimal way.
Mm-hmm.
And this vision is often imposed from the top down
Okay.
without much consideration
Yeah.
for the people who are actually going to be living in it.
Right. So you're ignoring the human element.
Precisely.
Okay.
When you overlook the complexities of human behavior,
Right. What?
culture, and local knowledge,
Yeah.
you end up with solutions that don't actually fit the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll see with both Le Corbusier and Lenin.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Le Corbusier.
Yes,
So he's considered like one of the most influential architects of the 20th century.
absolutely.
But I know that his ideas about cities were pretty controversial.
Very much so.
So what was his vision? Like, what did he think the city of the future should be like?
So Le Corbusier wanted to completely transform the way we think about cities.
Okay.
He was all about this large-scale urban planning,
Okay.
separating the different functions of a city,
Mhm.
and using modern materials and technology to create a more efficient
Okay.
and, in his mind, visually appealing environment.
So he basically wanted to like hit the reset button on cities and just start from scratch.
You got it.
Okay.
He looked at traditional cities as just messy and inefficient.
Uh-huh.
And he even said in one of his writings, and I quote, "We must refuse to afford even the slightest concession to to the mess we are in now."
Wow.
So he truly believed that a completely planned city
Right.
would be far superior.
Okay, so what did this like ideal city look like to him?
Yeah, so
Paint us a picture?
imagine towering skyscrapers,
Hmm.
wide avenues designed for cars,
Okay.
vast open spaces,
Okay.
and designated zones for living, working, and recreation.
Okay.
He wanted a city that was orderly, efficient, and visually striking.
Like a machine.
Almost like a perfectly designed machine, yes.
Yeah, it sounds impressive, but
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm getting like
Yeah,
a cold feeling.
you're picking up on something crucial.
Okay.
One of the biggest criticisms of Le Corbusier is that he prioritized
Okay.
visual order and efficiency
Yeah.
over the actual experience of the people living in the city.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he was designing a city for robots, not humans.
Right, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Yes.
He actually called for the death of the street.
Yeah.
What did he mean by that?
So he believed that traditional streets,
Yeah.
with all their hustle and bustle, the crowds, the mix of shops and homes,
Right.
was a source of disorder and inefficiency.
Huh.
And he wanted to replace them with wide avenues for cars
Okay.
and separate pedestrian walkways,
Sure.
all in the name of improving traffic flow and creating a visually pleasing environment.
It sounds kind of dystopian.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit.
But isn't he overlooking, like, the social and cultural role that streets play?
Yes.
I mean, streets are where we connect with each other.
Exactly. You're exactly right. Streets aren't just for transportation.
Right.
They're where people interact,
Yeah.
socialize, and experience the vibrancy of a city.
Yeah.
So by eliminating the traditional street,
Right.
Le Corbusier inadvertently designed a city that, while maybe visually appealing in his mind,
Right.
lacked that human element
Totally.
that makes a city come alive.
Yeah, it's ironic.
It is, isn't it?
And we see this play out in reality with Brasilia, right?
Oh, so Brasilia, the capital of Brazil,
Yeah.
is often seen as a real-world example of Le Corbusier's ideas put into practice.
Okay.
It was a planned city,
Yeah.
built from scratch in the 1950s, and it followed many of his principles.
Okay.
It has the functional segregation, the monumental architecture,
Okay.
and a strong emphasis on cars.
But it didn't quite work out the way they thought it would, huh?
Not exactly. While Brasilia is visually striking,
Yeah.
many residents found it to be a cold and alienating place.
Really?
Yeah, it lacked that organic street life,
Right.
those chance encounters,
Yeah.
the sense of community that you find in more traditional cities.
Yeah.
It became a city for cars, not people.
And Scott mentions this term Brasilite.
Yeah.
What is that?
Brasilite is a term that was coined by Brasilia's early residents
Okay.
to describe
Okay.
the negative social and psychological effects
Wow.
of the city's design.
Oh, wow.
They felt isolated,
Yeah.
disoriented, almost like they were living in a concrete maze.
Oh, wow.
It highlights how even a city built with good intentions
Right.
can fail to meet the needs of its inhabitants.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's a cautionary tale about prioritizing this top-down vision
Right.
over the lived experience of the people.
So even though it was planned with all good intentions,
Yeah.
it still missed the mark.
It did.
And that's kind of a classic example of how this authoritarian high modernism can backfire.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't account for, like, human nature.
precisely. And this brings us to Jane Jacobs,
Okay.
who offered a really powerful critique
Okay.
of this whole approach to urban planning.
Okay.
Her work is a fascinating counterpoint to Le Corbusier's vision.
Okay. I've heard of Jane Jacobs,
Yeah.
but tell me more about her ideas.
Yeah, so Jane Jacobs was an urban activist and writer,
Okay.
and in her book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities,
Okay.
she completely challenged
Okay.
the fundamental assumptions of high modernist planning.
Okay.
She argued that cities
Uh-huh.
are complex, self-organizing systems
Okay.
that thrive on diversity and human interaction.
Okay.
And she criticized planners like Le Corbusier
Right.
for trying to impose this artificial order
Hmm.
on something that's inherently organic and dynamic.
So she was like the anti-Le Corbusier.
In many ways, yes.
Okay.
She was the champion of these messy, vibrant cities. She believed that the street, far from being a source of disorder, was actually the key to a safe and vibrant city.
Okay.
And she emphasized the importance of eyes on the street.
What does that mean?
It's this idea that when there's a constant flow of pedestrians
Right.
and a mix of uses,
Uh-huh.
like shops and residences and businesses all together,
Yeah.
it creates a natural surveillance
Yeah.
that deters crime.
So it's like she flipped the script on what order and safety mean.
Absolutely. She argued that planners were too focused on a city that looked orderly from above,
Okay.
but they didn't consider how it felt
Right.
to actually live and work there.
Right.
So for Jacobs, a visually chaotic street with its mix of people and activities could actually be a safe and functional place.
Okay.
It's about the lived experience of order, not just the visual aesthetic.
I see. Okay. And this idea of mixed-use development that she championed is still a big thing today.
It is.
Yeah.
Her work helped to shift the focus of urban planning away from those top-down authoritarian approaches
Oh.
towards more bottom-up community-based models.
Okay.
And she understood that cities are constantly evolving
Right.
and that embracing complexity and allowing for organic growth is vital.
So she brought humanism to city planning.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
She recognized that cities are ultimately about people
Right.
and advocated for planning that prioritizes human needs,
Yeah.
desires, and experiences. She understood that a truly livable city is one that feels alive
Right.
and welcoming to its residents.
Okay, so we've seen how this authoritarian high modernism played out in urban planning,
Hmm.
especially with Le Corbusier and the contrast presented by Jane Jacobs.
Yeah.
But how did these same ideas influence revolutionary movements?
Yeah.
This is where Lenin comes in, right?
This is where we see some really fascinating parallels
Okay.
between Le Corbusier's vision for the ideal city
Hmm.
and Lenin's model for a revolutionary party.
Oh, okay.
Two seemingly unrelated worlds,
Yeah.
yet connected by this underlying ideology.
I'm ready to see how they connect.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so it all starts with Lenin's belief
Okay.
in the absolute necessity
Okay.
of a vanguard party.
Okay, wait, hold on. What is a vanguard party?
Okay, so imagine a small,
Okay.
highly disciplined group of professional revolutionaries
Okay.
who believe that they know the best path to revolution, and they aim to lead the working class toward that goal.
Okay.
That's Lenin's vanguard party.
So we're seeing that top-down control again.
Exactly.
Okay.
And just like Le Corbusier, Lenin believed in the power of rational design and scientific principles to achieve his goals.
Okay.
He saw the vanguard party as this well-oiled machine designed to bring about a socialist revolution.
Right.
Hierarchy, discipline, centralized control. Those were his key ingredients.
Okay.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into authoritarian high modernism.
So last time we were exploring how this ideology shaped both urban planning with figures like Le Corbusier and revolutionary movements, specifically with Lenin's concept of the vanguard party.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really interested to dig into those who pushed back against Lenin's approach.
Yeah.
What were the alternative perspectives on revolution?
Yeah, you mentioned Rosa Luxemburg
Yes.
earlier, and she had some fundamental disagreements with Lenin.
She did. Luxemburg believed that revolutions were living, breathing things.
Yeah.
To her, they're organic processes driven by the actions of the masses. And she argued that any attempt to control or direct a revolution too rigidly would ultimately backfire. Almost like if you try to control a wildfire.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating is that Luxemburg wasn't opposed to the idea of a revolutionary party altogether.
Okay.
It was the type of rigid top-down control
Okay.
that Lenin advocated for.
So it was more about how the party functions within the movement
Yeah.
rather than whether it should exist at all.
Precisely.
More of a guide than a dictator?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Luxemburg believed that the party's role should be to support and guide the movement,
Okay.
offering analysis and strategy,
Right.
but not dictating every move.
Okay.
And she saw the relationship between the party and the masses
Yeah.
as a dynamic one,
Okay.
with both sides learning and evolving through the process of struggle.
This reminds me of Jane Jacobs and her argument that cities are complex, self-organizing systems.
Right.
They shouldn't be subjected to this rigid top-down planning.
Exactly.
So it seems like Luxemburg had a similar view on revolutions.
Yeah.
Gotta let them breathe.
That's a great connection. Both Jacobs and Luxemburg saw the limitations of imposing this artificial order
Yeah.
on systems that are inherently complex and dynamic.
Right.
They believed in the importance of organic growth, adaptation, and this creative energy
Yeah.
that comes from spontaneous decentralized action.
Okay.
And top-down control can stifle that energy,
Right.
whether it's in a city or in a revolution.
So if Lenin saw the vanguard party as a machine for making revolution, all gears and levels,
Yeah.
what kind of metaphor did Luxemburg use?
Yeah, so instead of machines and factories,
Okay.
Luxemburg preferred metaphors from the natural world,
Okay.
specifically organic processes,
Okay.
like the growth of a plant.
Okay.
She saw revolution as something that unfolds naturally,
Okay.
much like a seed sprouts, grows roots, and eventually blossoms.
It's so interesting how those metaphors really reveal a lot about their underlying assumptions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lenin, with his focus on machines and factories, he saw revolution as something that could be engineered,
Right.
controlled, almost like an assembly line.
Yeah.
Luxemburg, with her organic metaphors, she saw it as something more spontaneous
Yes.
and unpredictable, like a wildflower pushing its way through concrete.
Exactly.
You just never know exactly where it will sprout.
Exactly. And this difference in perspective had huge implications for how they envisioned
Yeah.
the role of the party and the relationship between leaders and the masses.
So, in Luxemburg's view, what were the dangers of Lenin's approach?
Yeah.
What happens when you try to control something as powerful as a revolution?
Yeah, so she worried that this vanguard party, fixated on control and discipline,
Yeah.
would suffocate the creativity and initiative of the working class.
Right.
She believed that revolution thrives on spontaneity, on people experimenting, taking risks, and learning from their mistakes.
So for Luxemburg, mistakes weren't something to be avoided.
Right.
They were a valuable part of the process.
Yeah, failing forward.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
She argued that a movement that's too afraid of making mistakes
Right.
becomes rigid
Yeah.
and inflexible, unable to adapt to new challenges.
Okay.
So for her, the true strength of the working class lay in its capacity for spontaneous action
Okay.
and collective problem solving.
It sounds like she had immense faith in the wisdom and resourcefulness of the masses.
She did.
That's a stark contrast to Lenin, who thought they needed to be led by a more enlightened elite.
Yeah, it's almost like they were looking at two different species.
Right, it's wild. So for Luxemburg, the process of revolution was just as important as the outcome.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like the journey matters just as much as the destination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She believed that the way a revolution unfolds
Yeah.
shapes the society it creates.
Okay.
So if the revolution is based on hierarchy, control, and suppressing dissent,
Right.
those tendencies will likely be reflected
Yeah.
in the new society.
It's like baking a cake.
Yeah,
The ingredients you use
exactly.
determine the flavor.
That's a thought-provoking analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of considering not just the goals,
Yeah.
but also the methods used to achieve them,
Yeah.
means and ends.
Right. They both matter.
Precisely. If the aim is a truly democratic and egalitarian society,
Mhm.
then the revolutionary process needs to reflect those values.
Okay.
It can't be freedom through oppression. It has to be freedom from oppression.
This raises a question for me. If Luxemburg was so critical of Lenin's approach,
Yeah.
what was her alternative? Like, how
Yeah.
does she envision the party functioning?
Yeah.
What's the recipe for the pro-democracy revolution cake?
Okay, so Luxemburg believed that the party should be a catalyst,
Okay.
like a spark to ignite the fire,
Okay.
but never try to contain or control the flames.
Okay.
She saw the party's role as primarily educational,
Okay.
helping to raise political consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
analyze the situation,
Yeah.
and suggest strategic options.
Okay.
But ultimately, the direction of the movement
Hmm.
should remain in the hands of the people.
Okay, so it's more about empowering the working class,
Exactly.
giving them the tools and knowledge to navigate their own liberation.
Exactly.
Hmm.
She believed that a truly revolutionary party should trust the wisdom and creativity of the working class.
Okay.
And she recognized that the most effective solutions
Yeah.
often emerge from the ground up,
Okay.
from the people closest to the problems, rather than being imposed from above.
Did Luxemburg have any specific examples of how this bottom-up approach could work?
Yeah, one of the key examples that she highlighted
Okay.
was the mass strike.
Okay.
She saw it as this spontaneous eruption
Yeah.
of working class power,
Mm-hmm.
this moment when people take their destiny into their own hands
Okay.
and they demonstrate their collective strength.
Didn't she write a whole pamphlet on that?
She did in 1906.
Okay.
It's called The Mass Strike, the Political Party, and the Trade Unions.
Okay.
And it was actually a direct response to Lenin's What is to be Done.
Wow, I love that. So what were her main arguments? Like, how does the mass strike embody her vision?
So Luxemburg argued that a mass strike can't be planned or orchestrated by a vanguard party.
Okay.
It's a spontaneous, unpredictable phenomenon
Okay.
that emerges organically from the lived experience of the working class.
So it's more like a force of nature than a carefully planned military operation.
Exactly.
Okay.
She saw it as this potent expression of collective anger and frustration.
Okay.
This moment when people break free from the constraints of everyday life
Uh-huh.
and assert their power in a way that can't be ignored.
It sounds like a social earthquake.
Yes.
Just like a sudden release of pent-up energy that reshapes the landscape.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how Luxemburg saw this seemingly chaotic and disruptive event
Right.
as a positive creative force.
It goes against the traditional view of revolution as purely violent and destructive.
It does, and that's what's so refreshing about her perspective.
Yeah.
She recognized that revolution can be messy,
Yeah.
unpredictable, and even joyful.
It's not just about seizing power, but about unleashing the creative energy of the masses
Exactly.
and building a new world.
Yeah, from the ground up.
This brings to mind the idea of Brazilite,
Yeah.
that feeling of isolation and disorientation that people felt in Brasilia.
Yes.
It seems like Luxemburg was trying to avoid creating a revolutionary version of Brazilate,
Right.
a society that felt sterile and controlled,
Mhm.
even if it was based on socialist principles.
You've hit on something incredibly important.
Okay.
In both urban planning and revolutionary movements,
Yeah.
the challenge is to create structures and systems
Right.
that support human flourishing
Yeah.
rather than stifling it.
So it's not enough to just change the rules. You
Exactly.
have to change the feeling.
It's not just about achieving certain goals,
Right.
like building a new city or establishing a socialist state.
Right.
It's about creating the conditions
Yeah.
for people to live freely, creatively, and autonomously.
Okay, so it's clear that Luxemburg's ideas offer a very different perspective on revolution than Lenin's.
They do.
Were there any other thinkers who challenged Lenin's model of the vanguard party?
Yes, there were others both inside and outside the Bolshevik Party.
Okay.
One notable figure is Alexandra Kollontai,
Okay.
a Russian revolutionary and feminist
Okay.
who was initially a close ally of Lenin.
Okay. What were her critiques of Lenin's approach?
So Kollontai, like Luxemburg, was concerned about the increasingly bureaucratic and top-down nature
Okay.
of the Bolshevik Party after it came to power in 1917.
Right.
She felt like it was drifting away from its roots,
Okay.
becoming more about maintaining control
Yeah.
than serving the people.
So she was worried that they were becoming too detached from the masses.
Exactly.
Get it?
Losing touch with the realities of everyday life.
Were there any specific policies or actions
Yeah.
of the Bolshevik government that she objected to?
One of the key issues that she focused on
Okay.
was the party's approach to labor and workplace organization.
Okay.
She was critical of the increasing reliance on centralized planning
Mm-hmm.
and what she saw as a disregard for the knowledge and skills of the workers themselves.
Okay. This sounds like a critique of high modernism more broadly.
Exactly.
That idea that experts always know best
Yes.
and that workers are just cogs in a machine.
You nailed it.
It's that same top-down mentality.
Kollontai believed that the success of the revolution depended on harnessing the creative energy and initiative of the working class,
Okay.
not treating them as passive recipients of orders from above.
Okay.
True progress comes from empowering people to use their skills and knowledge,
Right.
not dictating their every move.
Welcome back to our final part of our deep dive into authoritarian high modernism. It's been quite a journey.
But
We've gone from like Le Corbusier's grand vision for cities
yes.
to Lenin's ideas about revolution
Yeah.
and then to the critiques of those ideas by thinkers like Jane Jacobs, Rosa Luxemburg, Alexandra Kollontai.
Yeah, it's amazing how these seemingly disparate figures
Yeah.
and ideas
Right.
are all connected by this common thread.
Yeah, it's a testament to like how powerful ideas can be.
Absolutely.
Even across like different
Yeah.
fields and time periods.
Yeah, what's striking is how this ideology, with its faith in rational design, centralized control, power of experts,
Yeah.
can have both positive and negative consequences.
Right. It's like a double-edged sword.
It is capable of creating and destroying.
And we've also seen the importance of not just focusing on the end goal of progress,
Right.
but also how we get there.
Yeah, methods.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are your final thoughts?
Yeah.
What can we learn from this exploration of authoritarian high modernism?
You know what stands out to me is that both Le Corbusier and Lenin shared this unwavering belief
Okay.
that they could create a better world by imposing order from above.
Okay.
They had these grand visions
Right.
for how society should be organized,
Yeah.
and they were willing to use the power of the state to achieve those visions, even if it meant overriding the desires
Right.
of the people they claimed to serve.
And while their intentions might have been good,
Yeah.
their methods often ignored the complexities of human behavior,
Right.
the richness of culture, the
Yeah.
importance of local knowledge.
It's like they were looking at a map, but forgetting that the territory is always more nuanced and complex.
Yeah, exactly. They thought they could like design a perfect system.
Right.
A utopia.
A utopia on paper,
Yeah.
but they didn't really grasp like the messiness and unpredictability of real life.
Right.
Life rarely conforms to blueprints.
So what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Are we doomed to repeat these mistakes?
Right.
Or is there a way to pursue progress without falling into that trap?
I believe the key is finding a balance
Okay.
between planning and spontaneity,
Okay.
between expertise and local knowledge,
Okay.
and between the desire for order and the acceptance of complexity.
Yeah. How do we make that happen?
Well, we can draw some valuable lessons from the
Okay.
thinkers that we've discussed.
Okay.
Jane Jacobs showed us the importance of understanding how cities actually work,
Right.
listening to the needs and desires of the people who live in them,
Yeah.
and allowing for organic growth and change.
Yeah.
It's about bottom-up design,
Yeah.
not top-down decrees.
And Rosa Luxemburg emphasized that revolutions are about unleashing the creative energy of the masses, allowing them to shape their own destiny.
It's not about imposing a predetermined outcome,
Right.
but creating the space for collective self-determination.
And Alexander Kollontaj's work highlights the importance of democratizing decision-making processes,
Yes.
giving workers and communities more control over their own lives.
Empowering people.
Yeah, not dictating to them.
Yes.
So it's not about like abandoning progress altogether or rejecting expertise.
Right.
It's about making progress more inclusive,
Yeah.
more responsive to human needs, more respectful of the complexities of the world we live in.
Yeah.
It's about progress with heart, not just progress for progress's sake.
That's beautifully put. The challenge for us today is to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Right.
Embrace the messiness,
Yeah.
unpredictability of life,
Yeah.
and find ways to pursue progress that are both ambitious and humane.
It's a tall order,
It is.
but I think it's one worth taking on. We're at a crossroads, and we need to decide what kind of future we want to build.
We are. And exploring ideas like authoritarian high modernism helps us understand the stakes involved
Yeah.
and chart a more just and sustainable path forward.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this.
Of course.
It's been fascinating.
It's been my pleasure.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective
Yeah.
on how even the best laid plans can go awry.
Yeah.
How crucial it is to like incorporate diverse perspectives and embrace complexity
Absolutely.
in our quest for a better future.
Yeah.
It's a humbling reminder that we don't have all the answers.
It is.
Yeah.
And remember, the exploration doesn't end here.
Right.
Keep questioning, keep learning,
Hmm.
keep diving deep into the world of ideas.
Yeah.
The answers are out there,
Okay.
waiting to be discovered.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us
You're welcome.
on this deep dive into authoritarian high modernism.